cops rob black business owner. He's a fearless Delta Force commander. In the bustling heart of Atlanta, Georgia, a seemingly ordinary entrepreneur named Marcus King runs a cozy neighborhood cafe. The walls are lined with family photos, fragrant coffee beans, and the sweet aroma of home-baked pastries. Everyone in the community knows Marcus for his generosity and warm spirit. He's the kind of man who helps local youths find jobs and organizes food drives every Thanksgiving. But behind that gentle smile lies a past shrouded in secrecy. A chance encounter with a small group of corrupt police officers will pull back the curtain on a chapter of his life few could have imagined. Marcus King woke before dawn every day. Even after years of civilian life, the discipline from his military days never left him. His coffee shop, King's Roast, opened at 6:00 a.m. sharp. He'd greet each customer with a bright grin and fresh pastries, often chatting about local events, music, or the challenges of raising teenagers in the modern world. Situated on the corner of Peachtree Street in Atlanta, the cafe wasn't the largest establishment, but it was well loved by locals, including a few officers from the Atlanta Police Department who would pass by for an early morning cup of coffee. No one knew that Marcus's first steps into his cafe each day followed a silent ritual carried over from another life, a life where he'd once worn a different uniform, one that came with camouflage, mission briefings, and an unwavering oath to protect his country. Years ago, he had been a member of the U.S. Army's elite Delta Force. His records were scattered and redacted, and only a select few knew about his covert missions in places like Mogadishu during Operation Gothic Serpent or the rugged mountains of Afghanistan. Marcus had left that life behind, so he thought. He preferred the quiet of the early morning, brewing coffee and handing out a friendly smile rather than clenching a rifle in an unknown desert. Unfortunately, fate has a way of summoning the past at the most unexpected moments. For several months, businesses in Marcus's neighborhood had been experiencing strange break-ins. Oddly, there were never any signs of forced entry, locks remained intact, and security cameras always malfunctioned in the crucial seconds of the robbery. It soon became apparent that local store owners had fallen victim to some sophisticated operation. Then came the unsettling rumors. Certain police officers might be involved. No one had any proof, so the rumor remained a whisper, too faint for any formal action. Still, it weighed on people's minds, especially as more money and merchandise vanished. One cold January morning, Marcus was counting the week's earnings in his small office behind the cafe. The cafe's door was locked, and the lights were turned off except for a small desk lamp illuminating his workspace. The cash register drawer was out, and he was calculating totals for deposit. That was when the doorbell chimed. Even though the sign outside clearly read closed, Marcus tensed, remembering his old training, a quick mental pivot from calm to high alert. His senses sharpened. He slid the register drawer back into the counter, turning off the lamp. In the darkness, he watched as 3 silhouettes entered his cafe. They moved quietly, as though they didn't want to be heard, professionals of some kind. He heard muffled whispers, then saw the glint of a flashlight beam scanning the floor. Silently, Marcus reached for his phone, but a small voice inside him knew this might be futile. If these were the break-in perpetrators, he suspected they had already done something to jam phone signals or cut the lines. Worse yet, if they really were law enforcement, they might have ways to bypass alarms. He set the phone gently on the desk and tiptoed toward the door connecting his office to the cafe floor. He heard boots brushing against the wooden floor. The intruders were heading to the register. That's when the overhead light abruptly flicked on, revealing a shocking sight. Standing by the counter were 2 uniformed police officers, Officers Dylan Morgan and Brian Caldwell, accompanied by a third individual, a plainclothes detective named Eric Sharp. Marcus recognized Morgan and Caldwell from their sporadic visits. They were from the local precinct, but they rarely smiled, rarely said a friendly word. He'd seen the detective too, though he'd never learned Sharp's name. Sharp had come into the cafe once or twice, but always kept to himself. In that moment, the men froze in the harsh glow of the fluorescent lights. They were each stuffing wads of cash into black duffel bags, money from Marcus's business. Instinctively, Marcus stepped out, confronting them with a calmness honed by years of high-stakes operations. "What is this?" he demanded in a low voice. Morgan smirked. "None of your business," he snapped, though it clearly was. He flashed his badge in a half-mocking way. "We're here on official business. Stealing my money is official business?" Marcus asked, eyes narrowing. Detective Sharp aimed a small, silenced pistol in Marcus's direction. "Not a word," he said. "You do exactly as we say." Marcus felt anger simmer in his veins, but he kept it carefully contained. He took a deep breath and slowly raised his hands. "I'm unarmed," he said evenly, hoping to diffuse the situation. "I'm just a business owner." "Yeah, right," Caldwell sneered. "You keep your mouth shut. We'll leave you in one piece." But something about the situation felt more threatening than just a routine money grab. Marcus noticed the tension in Caldwell's posture, the glare in Sharp's eyes. They didn't plan on leaving a witness. Any illusions that they might spare him if he kept quiet were slipping away quickly. Marcus had two choices: comply or fight back. The soldier within him made that decision in a heartbeat. He caught a glimpse of a wooden spoon on a shelf by the kitchen doorway, just a spoon. But in trained hands, even the simplest object could be a weapon. First, he needed to create a distraction. He locked eyes with Morgan. "If you're cops," he said, "why not just go through the front door in broad daylight? Why break in like criminals?" The question was rhetorical, but it was enough to make Morgan bristle and take a threatening step forward. Behind Morgan, Caldwell's stance loosened momentarily. That was all Marcus needed. In a flash, Marcus lunged backward and grabbed the wooden spoon from the kitchen shelf. With a swift motion, he flung a handful of flour from an open sack in the direction of the men. It wasn't lethal, of course, but it created a burst of white dust that caught them off guard, stinging eyes and blocking vision. Sharp cursed and fired a shot that missed by several feet, lodging into the wall. Marcus used the moment of confusion to dart behind the counter. He needed to disarm at least one of them quickly. Morgan scrambled to wipe flour off his face, his eyes blinking rapidly. Caldwell, momentarily blinded, stumbled backward into a table. Marcus seized the opportunity, vaulting over the counter and delivering a quick blow to Morgan's wrist. The gun clattered to the floor. Next, Marcus struck Morgan's solar plexus with the heel of his hand. With a guttural gasp, Morgan collapsed, struggling for air. Adrenaline surged through Marcus like an old friend, every nerve electrified with the thrill of combat. Caldwell, regaining his bearings, charged at Marcus with a baton raised. Marcus grabbed a metal tray from the counter and blocked the incoming strike. The sound of metal on metal reverberated in the cafe. With a sidestep, Marcus dodged Caldwell's next blow, then hooked his leg around the officer's ankle and threw him to the ground. The baton clattered away. Detective Sharp, the real threat, maintained his distance. Marcus sensed he was the more experienced predator in the pack. Sharp leveled his pistol in a two-handed grip, steady despite the swirling flour in the air. Marcus froze, noting the unwavering focus in Sharp's eyes. "Move one more muscle," Sharp hissed, "and I'll put a bullet right between your eyes." Marcus raised his hands slowly, mind racing. If Sharp fired, it was over. He had no illusions about outrunning a bullet, but he had learned to read an enemy's expression, posture, and breath control. Sharp's finger was tense on the trigger, yet he hesitated, perhaps uncertain if Morgan or Caldwell was in his line of fire. The two officers were scrambling on the floor behind Marcus, moaning and cursing in pain. In a split second, Marcus dove to his left, behind a row of chairs, before Sharp could fire. A bullet whizzed past, exploding the cafe window in a shower of glass. Sharp advanced, pistol still raised. Marcus, unarmed, except for the wooden spoon he had initially grabbed, needed a better plan. Suddenly, a new figure burst through the cafe's front door, a neighbor, Mr. Reggie Harris. Reggie had a tendency to check on Marcus's cafe late at night, concerned about the string of burglaries. Now he stood slack-jawed at the sight of officers wrestling on the floor and Marcus rolling behind an overturned table, flour dust swirling in the air. Sensing danger, Reggie fumbled for his phone to dial 911. Immediately, Sharp wheeled around, training his gun on Reggie. "Put the phone down," he barked. Marcus saw his chance. With Sharp distracted, he dashed forward and tackled him, pinning Sharp's wrist to the ground as the detective's gun discharged twice more. One round embedded in the ceiling, and another shattered a row of ceramic cups on a display shelf. Marcus wrestled the pistol away, then quickly ejected the magazine and cleared the chamber with practiced efficiency. He tossed the disarmed weapon across the room. Sharp's eyes widened, recognition flashing across his face. This man knew what he was doing. This was no ordinary cafe owner. Morgan and Caldwell, battered from the scuffle, staggered to their feet. They had firearms too, but the ferocity of Marcus's hand-to-hand skill made them hesitate. Caldwell raised his weapon, but Sharp shouted, "Stand down! We can't risk any more noise!" The banging of the gunshots had likely alerted neighbors, and sirens would soon follow. The three men, now humiliated and cornered, had lost the advantage. Reggie stood trembling near the door. "I called the police," he said shakily. "The real police, I mean." At the phrase, "the real police," Morgan's face twisted into a scowl. Caldwell spat on the floor, a mixture of defiance and fear in his eyes. It was a standoff, but it wouldn't last long. The approaching sirens grew louder, red and blue lights flickering down the street. The cops outside had no idea that the men inside their colleagues were committing armed robbery. Within minutes, a half-dozen squad cars sealed off the street. Officers took defensive positions, demanding everyone exit with their hands above their heads. In the swirl of confusion, it was easy for the corrupt trio to spin a desperate lie. They insisted they had responded to an emergency call about a violent man brandishing a weapon inside the cafe. Marcus watched in disbelief as Morgan flashed his badge to the first officers on the scene, leading them to place Marcus in cuffs. "It's a setup," Reggie yelled desperately to one of the arriving officers. "They're the ones robbing the place." But Reggie's shouts were drowned by the chaotic bustle of additional cops arriving and onlookers filming with their phones. Detective Sharp barked out orders with the authority of an officer in charge, directing the uniformed responders to drag Marcus into a squad car. Marcus had never felt so powerless. That old pit in his stomach returned, the same feeling he had before going on certain high-risk missions where the lines between friend and foe blurred. Now it was happening on his own home turf, in the city he loved and served. As he was shoved into the back of a squad car, he caught a glimpse of Reggie arguing with a more senior officer. The officer looked skeptical, but at least he was listening. Another neighbor arrived, Miss Taylor from the bakery next door, frantically gesturing to the shattered window and the bullet holes. The senior officer's eyes narrowed. Maybe he was beginning to suspect something was off. Then the unstoppable march of technology intervened. Multiple cell phone videos captured the confrontation. Social media lit up with posts about cops robbing a local cafe. Furious citizens demanded answers. By the time Marcus was taken to the precinct, the news was already breaking across local stations. The Atlanta chief of police, a stern woman named Helene Porter, was awakened in the middle of the night by phone calls from city officials demanding she handle the scandal swiftly. Marcus spent several hours in a bleak interrogation room, illuminated by flickering fluorescent lights. He was still wearing his flour-dusted apron. There was a time in his Delta Force days when he had been questioned by foreign authorities with far harsher methods, but somehow, being on the wrong side of the table in his own city's police station cut deeper. This was personal. Eventually, Chief Porter herself walked in, accompanied by an internal affairs investigator named Linda Garcia. Porter made no attempt to hide her exhaustion. Still wearing a crisp suit, she folded her arms and fixed Marcus with a stony gaze. "Mr. King," she began, "we've been getting conflicting reports about what happened tonight. According to Officers Morgan and Caldwell, you resisted arrest. Detective Sharp claims you attacked them without provocation, that you're some sort of ex-military type with violent tendencies." She paused, studying Marcus's reaction. "We also have multiple civilian eyewitness accounts and video evidence that contradict their statements." Marcus inhaled slowly, choosing his words carefully. "Chief Porter, I'm not a violent man. I'm a retired Army veteran, yes, but I run a cafe. That's it. They broke in, they tried to rob me." Investigator Garcia laid a stack of photos on the table, snapshots from cell phones. These images show Officers Morgan and Caldwell with their guns raised, you on the ground. There's another where you seem to be taking the gun from Detective Sharp. The entire scene looks chaotic, but from the timestamps on these videos, it's clear the police arrived after you disarmed Sharp. That means you must have been defending yourself. It's pretty damning against Sharp's version of events. Marcus felt a slight surge of relief, though he knew this was far from over. Corrupt cops often manage to twist facts. "I only defended myself, ma'am." The chief's expression softened, and she looked at him more carefully. "Retired Army, you said?" "Yes, ma'am." "Delta Force," Marcus replied, his voice steady, though he rarely liked disclosing that detail. Porter exchanged a glance with Garcia, who raised an eyebrow. "Delta Force," the investigator repeated, scribbling a note. "That could explain your skill in disarming them." Marcus said nothing more. He knew that claiming a Special Forces background might open old wounds, but it could also lend credibility to his explanation of how he took on 3 armed officers without getting shot. The conversation took an unexpected turn when Chief Porter's phone chimed. She glanced at the screen, frowned, and looked back at Marcus. "Mr. King, you're free to go for now. More evidence has come to light, including surveillance footage from neighboring shops. I have a feeling the story Officer Morgan and Detective Sharp told us is about to unravel." Within 24 hours, the city of Atlanta was buzzing with fury. News outlets showcased the bizarre story of police officers allegedly robbing local businesses under the cover of darkness. City council members demanded swift justice. The district attorney announced a special task force to investigate. Under mounting pressure, the Atlanta Police Department placed Morgan, Caldwell, and Sharp on immediate suspension pending the outcome of the investigation. But that was just the beginning. Detective Sharp's past cases were reopened, and the threads led to a larger tapestry of corruption. Sharp's cousin works security for a chain of local pawn shops where items from numerous unsolved burglaries had reportedly surfaced. A glance at Caldwell's finances revealed suspicious deposits. Morgan's personal vehicle, a brand new BMW, was well beyond a cop's standard paycheck. It didn't take long for internal affairs to connect the dots. Over a 2-year period, the trio had orchestrated a wave of robberies, targeting small businesses in struggling neighborhoods. They knew the owners rarely had the resources or connections to fight back effectively. This time, however, they had chosen the wrong victim. Within a week, the district attorney built a strong case, aided by the cell phone footage and testimonies from Reggie and Miss Taylor. Marcus also provided a statement, though he kept the details of his Delta Force background minimal. He told them only what they needed to know, that he had specialized training to protect himself and others. Despite being cleared of wrongdoing, Marcus found himself in a strange, emotional place. The old instincts, the surge of adrenaline, and the hyper-awareness of danger had awakened memories from his past missions, memories he had worked so hard to bury. That life was behind him. Yet, after coming face to face with violence again, the nightmares returned, the old ghosts stirring from slumber. He tried to maintain normalcy at the cafe, greeting his customers with the same warm smile, but his regulars noticed the hint of tension in his eyes. A kind old lady named Miss S. Davenport asked, "Dear, are you sure you're okay? You look tired." Marcus forced a chuckle, attributing it to some mild insomnia. In truth, his nights were restless. He kept replaying the robbery in his mind, analyzing every detail as though it were a mission gone wrong. He worried that he might have done something differently, that perhaps he could have subdued the officers without making a spectacle. But deep down, he knew any attempt at stealth or negotiation would have been futile. They had intended to eliminate him. Even behind bars, Detective Sharp harbored a vicious grudge. He refused to go down quietly, certain he could manipulate the system. Before his arrest, Sharp had arranged an under-the-table deal with a local gang leader named Carlos "Snake" Barrera. According to the arrangement, Sharp provided safe passage for the gang's drug shipments in exchange for a cut of the profits. With his arrest, Sharp feared that arrangement might unravel. He needed a scapegoat, someone to blame for the sudden exposure, someone like Marcus King. On a frigid evening 2 weeks after the incident, a pair of masked men entered King's Roast just before closing. Marcus instantly recognized their posture, ominously tense, scanning the surroundings, hands twitching near their concealed waistbands. No one else was in the cafe except for a young part-time employee, Jasmine, who was mopping the floor. "Hey, we're closed," Jasmine said politely, though her voice wavered with apprehension. "Where's Marcus King?" the taller man demanded. Marcus stepped out from behind the espresso machine. "I'm Marcus. How can I help you?" Instead of answering, the men pulled out pistols. Jasmine let out a terrified gasp. Marcus's heartbeat pounded, but he kept his exterior calm. He raised his hands, stepping forward in a non-threatening manner. "Take it easy," he said. "There's no need for violence." The shorter man sneered. "Sharp sends his regards. You messed with the wrong people. They advanced, guns leveled." Marcus had to move quickly to ensure Jasmine's safety. With a subtle nod, he signaled for her to move behind the counter. She inched away, eyes wide with fear. The taller intruder glanced at Jasmine's movement and made a mistake. He shifted his eyes off Marcus for a split second. In that split second, Marcus snatched a steel pitcher from the counter and hurled it at the taller man's gun hand. The pistol flew from his grip and clattered onto the tile. The shorter man cursed, firing a shot that grazed Marcus's shoulder, sending a shock of pain down his arm. Marcus gritted his teeth, ignoring the sting, and tackled the shorter gunman, slamming him against a display case. The glass shattered around them, coffee beans spilling across the floor. The taller man scrambled to retrieve his pistol, but Jasmine, in a burst of courage, grabbed a piping hot coffee pot and threw it at him. The scalding liquid splashed across his arm, causing him to howl in agony. Marcus delivered a swift elbow strike to the shorter man's temple, knocking him out cold. Then he turned to the taller one, who was now on his knees, desperately wiping hot coffee off his face. Marcus wrestled him to the ground and locked his arms behind his back until police arrived, summoned by Jasmine's frantic 911 call. The aftermath confirmed his suspicions. The men were connected to the local gang leader, Snake Barrera, who had ties to Detective Sharp. They had come seeking revenge, presumably to intimidate or silence Marcus before Sharp's corruption case went to trial. Instead, they'd been subdued by a cafe owner with far more fight than they expected. By the time Detective Sharp, officers Morgan and Caldwell appeared in court, the public outcry was deafening. The district attorney's office had built a formidable case. Multiple accounts of robbery, video evidence, suspicious bank records, internal police logs, and newly uncovered links to local criminal organizations. The prosecuting attorney was relentless, painting a vivid picture of the betrayal these men had committed against the public trust. Marcus was called as a key witness. He testified with a steady calm, recounting the events of that night. When the defense tried to question his credibility, claiming he used excessive force, the prosecution countered by pointing to Marcus's decorated military record and the emergency circumstances of the break-in. The defense had little ground to stand on, especially with a litany of other small business owners stepping forward to share similar experiences. The jury took less than 3 hours to return a verdict, guilty on multiple felony charges, including armed robbery, conspiracy, and assault with a deadly weapon. Sharp, Morgan, and Caldwell were each sentenced to lengthy prison terms. Snake Barrera, caught in a parallel investigation, also found himself behind bars. In a final twist of poetic justice, the corrupt officers' reputations were completely destroyed. Their careers, freedoms, and illusions of power were stripped away. For Marcus, it was a kind of catharsis. He watched Sharp's jaw clench with rage as the verdict was read. Morgan and Caldwell hung their heads, scarcely able to meet anyone's gaze. The smugness, the sense of entitlement, all drained away, leaving them to face the consequences of their actions. The weeks following the trial were a whirlwind of media attention. Journalists crowded Marcus's cafe, wanting interviews with the Delta Force cafe owner who had exposed police corruption. At first, Marcus was overwhelmed by the spotlight. He granted only a few short interviews, emphasizing that he wanted to move on and continue running his business. His main concern was keeping King's Roast a welcoming place, a refuge for the community rather than a hotbed of press sensationalism. Chief Porter reached out to Marcus personally, offering apologies on behalf of the department and praising his courage. She implemented new oversight measures to prevent such corruption from taking root again. "We owe you a debt of gratitude," she told him, her voice thick with sincerity. "You could have saved many more from falling prey to these criminals in uniform." Marcus accepted the apology, though it would take time for him to fully trust the police again. He believed there were plenty of good officers in Atlanta. He'd met some of them, but the betrayal left a scar. The community rallied around Marcus and his cafe. Regular customers returned in droves. The once quiet corner on Peachtree Street became a beacon of hope. People of all backgrounds came together, inspired by the story of a man who refused to be victimized, who stood up against abuse of power with courage and integrity. In time, King's Roast expanded. Marcus renovated the place to have a small stage for local musicians, turning it into a hub for open mic nights and community gatherings. He started a program to hire young veterans and underprivileged youth, teaching them job skills in a supportive environment. In part, it was his way of honoring the legacy of the men and women he served with in Delta Force, an unspoken bond that called him to help others transition to civilian life. The nightmares gradually subsided, replaced with a newfound sense of purpose. Marcus discovered that he could serve his country in a different way now, by uplifting his neighborhood, showing people that resilience and unity were sometimes the strongest weapons against injustice. And so, in a city once overshadowed by corruption and fear, a simple cafe owner, once a fearless Delta Force commander, emerged as a symbol of righteousness. The story of how cops robbed a black business owner, he's a fearless Delta Force commander, became a legend in Atlanta's local law, repeated in barber shops, grocery lines, and news stations. It was a tale of betrayal and courage, of ancient ghosts returning to haunt, and of karma landing a crushing blow on those who abused their power. At last, Marcus King found peace and a renewed faith in the power of community. He learned that sometimes you can't outrun your past, but you can transform it into something that lights the path forward for yourself and for everyone around you. Thank you for following the unforgettable journey of Marcus King, from a quiet cafe owner to the unstoppable hero who stood against corruption. His determination and moral compass remind us that true courage isn't about a uniform or a title. It's about standing up for what's right, no matter the cost. If you felt your heart race during his face-off with the corrupt officers, or if you cheered when justice finally prevailed in that courtroom, then you felt the power of this remarkable story. Now, we invite you to keep that spirit alive. Make your voice heard against injustice and support those who defend what's right. If you enjoyed this story, please hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring and thrilling tales. Your support helps us continue shining a light on stories that celebrate courage, unity, and the indomitable human spirit.